Admiral Jake Morrison stood on the bridge of the UE's Retribution, watching the last traces of hyperspace fade away behind his fleet. 3,000 human warships appeared in the darkness of space, like ghosts returning from the dead. The ships were massive and black, with weapons covering every surface. These were not the same small vessels that had fled Earth 50 years ago, when the Galactic Empire tried to wipe out humanity. Commander Lisa Park worked at her station with quick fingers dancing across the controls. She looked up at Morrison with bright eyes that held no fear, only determination. The bridge around them hummed with quiet energy as dozens of crew members prepared for what would change everything. "Admiral, we have successfully jumped into the Zeridian system," Park reported in a clear voice. "The Empire's Third Fleet is positioned around their main shipyards, exactly where our spies said they would be." Morrison nodded slowly. His face showed no emotion, but inside his heart pounded with 50 years of anger and pain. He remembered the day the Empire's ships had appeared over Earth's colonies. He remembered the burning cities and the screams of innocent people. He remembered running and hiding like an animal while alien weapons turned human settlements into ash. Captain Ryan Burke walked across the bridge carrying a datapad filled with reconnaissance information. Burke was tall and strong, with scars on his hands from the early days when humans had to fight with primitive weapons against advanced alien technology. Those days were over now. "Sir, we are detecting over 800 Imperial vessels in defensive positions," Burke said with satisfaction in his voice. "They are sending messages on all frequencies demanding that we surrender immediately. They still think we are the weak humans they almost destroyed." Morrison almost smiled at that. The Empire had made a terrible mistake when they decided to kill every human in the galaxy. They had left some alive, and those survivors had spent every day of the last 50 years preparing for this moment. Humanity had learned and grown and become something the Empire never expected. The tactical display showed the Imperial fleet spread out around the massive shipyards where they built their warships. The alien vessels looked powerful with their smooth curves and bright energy weapons, but Morrison knew they were using old technology. The Empire had grown lazy and comfortable, while humanity had been forced to innovate or die. "Open a channel to all ships," Morrison ordered. His voice would reach every human warrior in the fleet, men and women who had trained their entire lives for this day, people who had lost everything to the Empire's cruelty and had spent decades planning their revenge. The communication system activated with a soft beep. Morrison straightened his shoulders and spoke with the authority of someone who carried the hopes of his entire species. "All vessels, this is Admiral Morrison. Today, we begin the final phase of Operation Nemesis. We are not here to conquer. We are not here to steal territory or resources. We are here to deliver justice for every human life the Empire took from U.S., for Earth, for the colonies, for our children who never got the chance to grow up." Across the fleet, thousands of humans listened to their admiral's words. They sat in fighter cockpits and stood at weapon stations and worked in engineering rooms deep inside their ships. Each one of them had a story of loss and pain caused by the Empire. Each one of them was ready to fight. Morrison continued speaking. "The Empire believes we are still the primitive species they encountered 50 years ago. They remember us as weak beings with simple weapons and slow ships. They are about to learn how wrong they are. They created us through their cruelty. They forged us in the fires of their hatred. Now we return as something they never imagined." On the view screen, the Imperial fleet began to move into attack formation. Their ships glowed with energy as weapons charged and shields activated. Morrison could imagine the alien commanders feeling confident as they prepared to destroy what they thought was a desperate human attempt at revenge. Lieutenant Sophie Martinez monitored the enemy communications from her sensor station. She was young but had trained on captured Imperial technology since childhood. Her parents had died in the genocide, and she had grown up with one purpose: to make the Empire pay for their crimes. "Admiral, the Imperial commander, is broadcasting a message," Martinez reported. "He is ordering us to surrender or face complete destruction. He says humanity's resistance ends today." Morrison felt cold anger flow through him. The Empire still believed they were superior. They still thought humans were nothing more than annoying insects to be crushed. That arrogance would be their downfall. "Let them come," Morrison said quietly. "All ships maintain position. Charge weapons, but do not fire until I give the order. I want them to see what we have become before they die." The Imperial fleet began, moving forward with 800 warships advancing in perfect formation. Their weapons glowed brighter as they prepared to unleash the same devastating firepower that had once burned human worlds. But this time humanity was ready. Chief Engineer Paul Davis monitored the Retribution's power systems from deep inside the ship. The engines that moved their vessel through space were based on Imperial technology, but improved far beyond what the original builders had imagined. Human scientists had taken alien designs and made them better, faster, and more efficient. "Admiral, all systems are operating at maximum capacity," Davis reported through the communication system. "Power levels are stable. Weapons are fully charged. We are ready for combat." Morrison nodded and looked around the bridge at his crew. These people represented the best of humanity. They had survived when their entire species faced extinction. They had learned and adapted and grown strong. Now they would show the galaxy what humans could become when pushed to their limits. The Imperial ships drew closer with their weapons beginning to fire long-range shots that lit up the darkness of space with bright energy beams. The aliens expected to see human ships explode under their assault. Instead, the energy weapons struck invisible barriers around the human vessels and disappeared harmlessly. "Shields are holding perfectly," Park reported with excitement in her voice. "Their weapons cannot penetrate our defensive systems." Morrison smiled for the first time in years. Humanity had taken Imperial shield technology and improved it beyond recognition. The same weapons that had once burned human cities were now useless against human defenses. "Begin the attack," Morrison ordered. "Show them what 50 years of human ingenuity can accomplish. Make them pay for every life they took from us." Supreme Admiral Kethfor of the Zeridian Empire paced back and forth on his command deck while his forearms moved wildly as he stared at the tactical displays. The human fleet had appeared without any warning, and their ships looked nothing like the primitive vessels in Imperial records. These were massive warships with technology that seemed impossible. "This cannot be real," Kethfor hissed to his tactical coordinator, Sub-Admiral Jex Tai. "Our intelligence reports said humanity only had basic fusion drives and simple kinetic weapons. These vessels are using gravitational manipulation drives that we developed only 20 years ago." Jex Tai studied the sensor readings with growing alarm. His 3 eyes blinked rapidly as he processed the impossible data. The human ships were not just larger than expected, they were more advanced than most Imperial designs. Their energy signatures showed power levels that should have been beyond human capability. "Supreme Admiral, the human fleet is maintaining position, but their weapons are fully charged," Jex Tai reported. "Our long-range sensors cannot penetrate their shielding. We have no idea what kind of defensive systems they are using." Kethfor felt fear creeping into his mind for the first time in decades. The Empire had ruled the galaxy for thousands of years because their technology was superior to every other species. They had crushed dozens of civilizations with ease. Humanity was supposed to be extinct, or at least reduced to hiding in the Outer Rim territories. Commander Beth Collins sat in the cockpit of her fighter deep inside the UES, Vengeance preparing for launch. She had been born during the war and raised on stories of imperial cruelty. Her parents had died defending a human colony from alien bombardment. Now she would have her chance to make the Empire pay. All fighters prepare for launch. Collins spoke into her communication system. Remember, your training. The Empire's pilots think they are the best in the galaxy. Today we show them what human determination can accomplish. Around her, dozens of other fighter pilots checked their weapons and systems. These small craft were sleek and deadly, with technology that combined the best of human innovation with captured Imperial designs. Each fighter carried enough firepower to destroy an Imperial cruiser. The fighter bay doors opened, and Collins led her squadron into space. The human fighters moved with impossible grace, dancing between the larger warships like deadly angels. Imperial sensors tracked their movement, but could not get a weapons lock on the fast-moving targets. "Control, this is Razor Squadron," Collins reported as her fighters spread out in attack formation. "Enemy fighters are launching to intercept." Beginning engagement. The Imperial pilots flew in perfect formation, just as they had been trained for centuries. Their plasma weapons fired bright beams of energy that should have vaporized the human fighters. Instead, the energy struck adaptive shields that absorbed and redirected the attacks harmlessly into space. Collins smiled as she watched Imperial weapons fail against human defenses. She targeted the lead enemy fighter and fired a single quantum torpedo. The weapon phased through the alien shields as if they did not exist and struck the fighter's hull. The Imperial craft exploded in a brilliant flash of light. "Impossible," the Imperial squadron leader transmitted on an open channel. "Our shields should stop any weapon. How are they penetrating our defenses?" Collins did not answer. She was too busy destroying Imperial fighters with weapons they could not understand or defend against. Her squadron tore through the enemy formation like wolves among sheep. Within minutes, half the Imperial fighters were burning wreckage floating in space, back on the Retribution. Admiral Morrison watched the battle unfold with cold satisfaction. The Empire's finest pilots were being destroyed by human fighters that moved like nothing they had ever seen. Imperial weapons could not touch human shields, while human weapons cut through Imperial defenses like they were made of paper. Engineer Chief Paul Davis monitored the ship's power systems from his station deep in the engineering section. The technology that powered their weapons came from Imperial designs, but human scientists had improved every component. What the aliens had built, humanity had made better. "Admiral, all weapon systems are operating at peak efficiency," Davis reported. "The enemy's energy signatures suggest they are still using the same plasma weapons, technology from our first contact 50 years ago. They have not advanced at all, while we have evolved beyond their understanding." Morrison nodded as he watched. More Imperial fighters die. The Empire had grown comfortable and lazy during their long rule. They had not needed to improve their technology because no one could challenge them. That arrogance would cost them everything. Supreme Admiral Kethfer watched his fighters being slaughtered and felt panic rising in his chest. These humans were not the weak primitives his people remembered. They had become something new and terrifying. Their technology was beyond anything the Empire possessed. "Order all ships to concentrate fire on the human command vessel," Kethvar commanded. "If we can destroy their flagship, the rest of their fleet might retreat." 800 Imperial warships turned their weapons toward the UE's Retribution. Massive energy cannons charged with enough power to crack planets. Plasma torpedoes streaked through space trailing fire. The combined firepower of the Empire's Third Fleet focused on a single target. The weapons struck the Retribution's shields in a display of light that could be seen from orbit around nearby planets. Energy cascaded across invisible barriers as the human flagship absorbed an attack that should have vaporized it instantly. When the light faded, the Retribution hung in space completely undamaged, shields holding at 98%. Lieutenant Commander Park reported with amazement in her voice. Their weapons barely scratched our defensive systems. Morrison felt grim satisfaction flow through him. Human scientists had spent 50 years studying Imperial shield technology and found ways to make it nearly impenetrable. The same weapons that had once burned human cities were now useless against human defenses. Return fire, Morrison ordered. Target their command ships. I want to send a message that the Empire's reign of terror is over. The Retribution's main guns fired quantum torpedoes that phased through Imperial shields and struck their targets with devastating force. 3 Imperial battleships exploded in seconds as human weapons demonstrated their terrible efficiency. The Empire's finest warships were no match for weapons they could not understand. Captain Amy Chun commanded the heavy destroyer UES Hammer and watched her ship's experimental weapons vaporize Imperial cruisers with single shots. The Empire's quantum shielding had once seemed impenetrable, but proved useless against humanity's phase shift cannons that struck targets in alternate dimensional space. Target destroyed, Chen reported as another Imperial ship became expanding. Gas and debris. Enemy shields cannot adapt to our weapon frequencies. We have complete tactical superiority. The battle raged for hours, but it was never truly a contest. Imperial ships exploded one after another, while human vessels remained untouched. The Empire's military might was being systematically destroyed by an enemy they had underestimated completely. The battle had been raging for 6 hours, but Supreme Admiral Kethfar knew it was already over. His mighty Third Fleet was being torn apart by human weapons that seemed to ignore every law of physics the Empire understood. Half of his 800 warships were now burning wreckage floating in the darkness of space. The other half were desperately trying to retreat, but human fighters pursued them like hunting wolves. Captain Amy Chun stood on the bridge of the heavy destroyer UES Hammer, watching her experimental weapons tear through Imperial cruisers like they were made of thin metal. Her ship's phase shift cannons fired energy beams that existed in multiple dimensions, at once making them impossible to block or deflect. Each shot vaporized an Imperial vessel instantly. Target their battleship formation, Chon ordered her weapons. Officer, show them what 50 years of human innovation looks like. The Hammer's main cannon charged with a deep humming sound that made the deck plates vibrate. When it fired, the energy beam passed through 3 Imperial battleships simultaneously, existing in normal space and hyperspace at the same time. All 3 massive warships exploded in brilliant flashes that lit up the entire battlefield. Admiral Morrison watched the destruction from the bridge of the Retribution with no emotion on his face. This was not revenge or anger anymore. This was justice being delivered with cold precision. The Empire had chosen to commit genocide against humanity, and now they would face the consequences of that choice. Admiral, the enemy fleet is breaking formation, Lieutenant Sophie Martinez reported from her sensor station. Over 200 Imperial ships are attempting to flee the system. Should we pursue them? Morrison considered the question carefully. Part of him wanted to destroy every Imperial ship in the system, but he had a larger plan. The galaxy needed to know what had happened here. The Empire needed to understand that humanity was no longer the weak species they remembered. Let some of them escape, Morrison said quietly. I want survivors to carry word of this battle back to the Imperial capital. The Empire needs to know that humanity has returned and we are no longer prey. Lieutenant Commander Rick Thompson led a boarding party of human Marines toward the Imperial flagship. Their powered armor made them look like metal giants as they cut through the alien ship's hull with plasma torches. The Empire's soldiers tried to stop them, but human weapons and armor were far superior to anything the aliens possessed. Thompson's team moved through the Imperial ship like unstoppable machines. Their armor protected them from energy weapons, while their own guns fired rounds that could punch through Imperial battle suits. The alien soldiers fell back in terror as humans advanced through their ship room by room. "This is impossible," one Imperial officer transmitted before Thompson's team reached the bridge. "How did primitive humans develop technology that surpasses our own?" Thompson did not answer. He was focused on his mission to capture Imperial officers for interrogation. The human leadership needed to understand how the Empire had grown so weak and complacent. They needed to know if other alien species might pose a threat to humanity's plans. Dr. Nancy Wright worked in her laboratory aboard the UES Retribution studying captured Imperial weapons and armor. She had spent decades analyzing alien physiology and technology, looking for weaknesses that humanity could exploit. Her research had led to the development of sonic weapons specifically designed to disrupt Zeridian nervous systems. "Fascinating," Wright muttered as she examined an Imperial energy rifle. "Their weapon technology has not advanced at all in 50 years. They are still using the same plasma containment systems we captured during the First War. No wonder our adaptive shields can deflect their attacks so easily. The sonic weapons Wright had designed were now being used by human boarding parties throughout the Imperial fleet. The devices generated sound frequencies that caused intense pain and disorientation in Zeridian biology. Imperial soldiers collapsed in agony as human forces swept through their ships like a plague. Supreme Admiral Kethvar stumbled through the corridors of his flagship as human Marines cut their way toward the command deck. His forearms shook with fear as he heard the sounds of battle growing closer. The ship's internal defenses had failed completely against human technology. "Supreme Admiral, we must evacuate immediately," Sub-Admiral Jextai urged as he helped his superior officer toward the escape pods. "The humans have breached the main hull. Our security forces cannot stop them." Kethvar felt shame burning in his chest as he ran from an enemy the Empire had once dismissed as harmless primitives. How had humanity developed such advanced technology in only 50 years? How had they learned to build weapons that made Imperial designs look like children's toys? The escape pod launched just as human Marines reached the command deck. Kethvar watched through the small window as his flagship was captured by beings his people had tried to exterminate. The massive warship that had been the pride of the Imperial fleet was now under human control. Captain Danny Rodriguez commanded the UES Reckoning as it led the second wave of humanity's attack. His ship was identical to the Retribution in design, but carried experimental weapons that pushed the boundaries of known physics. The Reckoning's quantum torpedoes could phase in and out of normal space, making them impossible to intercept. "Target the Imperial shipyards," Rodriguez ordered. "Destroy their ability to build new warships. We want the Empire to know they can never threaten humanity again." The quantum torpedoes struck the massive orbital shipyards that had been building Imperial warships for centuries. The weapons phased through the station's shields and exploded inside the structure, causing catastrophic damage. Entire sections of the shipyard collapsed as secondary explosions tore through the facility. Morrison watched the shipyards burn and felt satisfaction deep in his soul. Those facilities had built the ships that attacked human colonies 50 years ago. Now they were nothing but twisted metal and escaping atmosphere. The Empire's ability to wage war was being systematically destroyed. "Admiral, we are receiving surrender requests from over 100 Imperial vessels," Martinez reported. "They are requesting terms for their capitulation." Morrison considered the request for a moment. The Empire had shown no mercy to human civilians. During the genocide, they had burned entire worlds and killed millions of innocent people. But humanity was not the Empire. They were better than the aliens who had tried to destroy them. Accept their surrender, Morrison ordered. Take their crews prisoner and secure their ships. We will decide their fate later. Right now, we have more important work to do. The battle was ending, but humanity's war against the Empire was just beginning. This victory would send shockwaves throughout the galaxy as news spread that the mighty Ziridian Empire had been defeated by the species they thought they had destroyed. Other alien civilizations would have to choose whether to support the Empire or accept humanity's new position as the dominant power in the galaxy. Admiral Morrison walked slowly through the corridors of the captured Imperial flagship toward the interrogation chamber where Supreme Admiral Kethver waited under heavy guard. The alien ship felt strange around him with its curved walls and dim lighting designed for Ziridian eyes. Human Marines stood at every intersection they're powered, armor making them look like metal gods of war. The interrogation room was small and sterile with white walls that hurt to look at. Kethver sat chained to a chair that had been designed for his four-armed body. The once proud Imperial commander looked broken and defeated. His three eyes darted around the room, as if searching for an escape that did not exist. Morrison entered the room and studied the Thea, alien who had commanded the fleet that was supposed to destroy humanity once and for all. The Supreme Admiral was tall and thin with gray skin that looked like old leather. His forearms were bound with energy restraints that would deliver painful shocks if he tried to move too quickly. "You are wondering how we did it," Morrison said in a calm voice as he sat down across from his prisoner. "How the primitive humans you tried to exterminate 50 years ago managed to build a fleet that makes your empire look like children playing with broken toys." Kethver said nothing, but his eyes showed fear and confusion. The translator device attached to his throat would convert his words into human language, but he seemed too shocked to speak. Morrison had expected this reaction from an alien who had just watched his entire worldview collapse. Intelligence officer Karen Price entered the room carrying a portable holographic projector. She was young, but had spent her entire career studying Imperial psychology and culture. Price knew exactly how to break an alien commander who had never faced defeat before. "Activate the display," Morrison ordered. The holographic projector came to life, showing footage from humanity's darkest hour 50 years ago. Imperial ships appeared in orbit around human colonies, raining death from the sky. Cities burned while civilians ran screaming through the streets. Bioweapons turned fertile farmland into poisoned wasteland. "Your people made one critical mistake," Morrison continued as the horrific footage played. "You left survivors. Not many, but enough. And those survivors found something you had hidden in the ruins of our worlds. Your own crashed ships. Your precious technology." Kethver's eyes widened as he began to understand what Morrison was telling him. The Supreme Admiral finally found his voice and spoke through the translator device. "Impossible. Our technology is genetically locked to Ziridian biology. Only our people can interface with Imperial systems. You could never have learned to use our designs." Price smiled coldly as she manipulated the holographic display to show new images. Human scientists working in underground laboratories during the years after the genocide. Researchers studying captured Imperial equipment with desperate intensity. Test subjects undergoing painful medical procedures to modify their own bodies. "That is where you are wrong," Price said. "We learned to adapt ourselves to your technology. Genetic modification, neural implants, biological restructuring. We changed our very DNA to become compatible with Imperial designs. We made ourselves into something new." Morrison leaned forward in his chair, bringing his face closer to the alien prisoner. "Every human in this fleet carries Ziridian genetic markers in their bloodstream. We modified our brains to interface with your computer systems. We grew new organs to handle your energy weapons. We became part alien to survive. The revelation hit Kethver like a physical blow. His three eyes blinked rapidly as he processed the impossible truth. Humans had not just stolen Imperial technology, they had transformed themselves into hybrid beings capable of using it. They had become something that was neither fully human nor fully alien. Chief Medical Officer Helen Baker entered the interrogation room, carrying a medical scanner and a collection of surgical instruments. She was older than the others, with gray hair and gentle hands that had performed thousands of modification procedures on human volunteers. Baker had overseen the transformation of humanity into something the Empire never expected. "Show him what?" "We became," Morrison ordered. Baker activated her medical scanner and pointed it at Morrison's body. The device revealed the truth that no one could see from the outside. Morrison's brain had been enhanced with Ziridian neural pathways. His blood carried alien proteins. His bones were reinforced with Imperial metal alloys. "We did not just steal your technology," Baker explained in a soft voice. "We made it part of ourselves. Every human officer in this fleet has undergone genetic modification to interface with Imperial systems. We can think like you think and react like you react, but we retained our human creativity and determination." Kethver stared at the medical readings in horror. The humans had not conquered Imperial technology through superior intelligence or better engineering. They had literally transformed themselves into hybrid beings that could use alien designs better than the aliens who created them. "This is blasphemy," Kethver whispered. "You have corrupted your own species. You are no longer truly human." Morrison stood up and walked around the interrogation table until he was standing directly behind the alien prisoner. "You are right. We are no longer the humans you remember. We are something new. Something you created through your cruelty and hatred. We are the consequence of your choice to commit genocide." Price manipulated the holographic display again, showing footage of human children being taught to use Imperial weapons from the age of 5. Scientists working around the clock to improve. Captured alien designs. Engineers building new types of warships that combined the best of human and Imperial technology. "We spent 50 years preparing for this day," Price said. "Every human child born after the genocide was modified from birth to be compatible with your technology. We raised an entire generation of hybrid warriors whose only purpose was to make your empire pay for its crimes." Baker moved around the room, checking her medical instruments as she spoke. "The modifications were not easy. Many volunteers died during the early procedures. But we learned from each failure and improved our techniques. We turned genetic engineering into an art form." Morrison returned to his seat and looked directly into Kethver's three eyes. "Your empire believed that superior technology would always guarantee victory. You never considered that your enemies might adapt and evolve. You never imagined that desperation could drive a species to transform itself." The alien commander sat in stunned silence as the full scope of humanity's transformation became clear. The humans had not just survived the attempted genocide, they had used it as motivation to become something far more dangerous than they had ever been before. They had turned the Empire's greatest strength into their own weapon. "What do you want from me?" Kethver finally asked in a voice barely above a whisper. "Why am I still alive when my fleet is destroyed?" Morrison smiled without warmth. "Because you are going to help us send a message to your empire. You are going to tell them exactly what they are facing. You are going to make them understand that humanity is no longer prey." News of the catastrophic defeat spread across the Galactic Empire like wildfire, consuming everything in its path. On 1,000 worlds, alien leaders gathered in emergency sessions, trying to understand how their mighty Third Fleet had been completely destroyed by the humans they thought were extinct. Panic seized the highest levels of Imperial government as reports flooded in describing technology It seemed impossible. Admiral Morrison stood in the communications center of the UES Retribution, preparing to record the message that would change the galaxy forever. Around him stood the human officers who had led the victory against the Empire. Captain Burke, with his scarred hands that remembered the early desperate battles. Commander Cohen's, whose parents had died in the Imperial bombardment. D.O. Wright, who had spent decades studying alien. Weaknesses dot the recording equipment, activated with a soft blue light indicating that Morrison's words would be transmitted across subspace to every corner of Imperial territory. Billions of alien beings would hear this message and understand that their empire's reign of terror was ending. People of the Galactic Empire, Morrison began speaking with the authority of someone who carried the hopes and dreams of his entire species. 50 years ago, your leaders made a decision that would doom your civilization. They chose to commit genocide against humanity because they feared what we might become. They were right to fear us, but not for the reasons they believed. A message continued with footage of the recent battles showing Imperial fleets being systematically destroyed by human forces that moved like nothing the aliens had ever seen. Morrison's voice remained calm and clinical as he described the complete tactical superiority that humanity now possessed over their former oppressors. We are not here for conquest or territory or the resources of your worlds. We are not interested in ruling over alien species or building an empire of our own. We are here because your empire made a choice to eliminate our people, and we are a consequence of that choice. You created us through your cruelty and forged us in the fires of your hatred. Captain Danny Rodriguez commanded the UES, reckoning as it led the second wave of humanity's fleet toward the Empire's core worlds. His massive warship was identical to the Retribution, but carried even more advanced weapons that pushed the boundaries of known science. The Reckoning's experimental quantum torpedoes could exist in multiple dimensions, simultaneously making them unstoppable. Behind Rodriguez followed 200 more human warships, each one crewed by warriors who had been modified from birth to interface with captured Imperial technology. These were not the desperate survivors who had fled Earth 50 years ago. These were hybrid beings who combined human determination with alien capabilities, creating something the galaxy had never seen before. Admiral, we are detecting Imperial reinforcements moving to intercept us, reported Lieutenant Martinez from her sensor station aboard the Retribution. 3 more fleets are converging on our position from different systems. Over 2,000 enemy vessels total, Morrison felt no concern at this news. The Empire could send 10,000 ships, and the result would be the same. Human technology was now so far advanced beyond Imperial designs that numbers no longer mattered. Each human warship could destroy dozens of alien vessels before sustaining any damage. Let them come, Morrison said quietly. The more ships they send, the clearer our message will become. The Empire needs to understand that resistance is futile. Their military cannot protect them from what they created. The holographic message continued playing on. Imperial worlds showing footage of human Marines boarding alien ships with powered armor that made them look like unstoppable machines. Imperial soldiers fell before sonic weapons designed specifically to exploit Ceridian physiology. Alien crews surrendered rather than face the hybrid warriors who had become something beyond their understanding. Chief Medical Officer Baker worked in her laboratory analyzing genetic samples taken from captured Imperial personnel. She had spent her entire career modifying human biology to be compatible with alien technology, but now she was studying the enemy to find new weaknesses that could be exploited. Fascinating, Baker muttered as she examined Ceridian DNA under her microscope. Their genetic structure has not changed at all in the 50 years since first contact. They have remained completely static while we have evolved far beyond our original form. No wonder their technology has stagnated the empires. greatest weakness was their belief in their own superiority. They had ruled the galaxy for so long that they stopped innovating or improving their capabilities. While humanity had been forced to adapt and evolve, or face extinction, the aliens had grown comfortable and lazy. Morrison's message reached the Owens' imperial capital world, where Emperor Zarthok sat on his crystal throne surrounded by advisors who could offer no solutions to the crisis facing their civilization. The ancient ruler had lived for over 300 years and had never experienced defeat or even serious challenge to his authority. "This cannot be happening," the Emperor whispered as he watched footage of his finest warships being destroyed. Like toys, how did these primitive mammals develop technology that surpasses our own? "We have ruled the galaxy for 10,000 years. His military advisors had no answers to offer. The humans were using weapons and defensive systems that seemed to violate the fundamental laws of physics. Their ships moved through space with impossible speed and agility. Their fighters could phase in and out of normal space at will." Morrison's voice continued echoing across the galaxy, carrying a message that would haunt the Empire's leaders for generations to come. "Your civilization has 72 hours to surrender, unconditionally to human authority. You will face trial for crimes against humanity. Your military forces will be disbanded and your weapons destroyed. Your technology will be confiscated and studied." The ultimatum was not a negotiation or a request for terms. It was a simple statement of fact delivered by beings who possessed the power to enforce their will across the entire galaxy. The Empire that had once seemed invincible was being given a choice between surrender and total annihilation. "This is not a threat or a bargaining position," Morrison continued. "This is justice being delivered by the species you tried to exterminate. We have become exactly what you feared most. We are humanity evolved beyond your ability to comprehend or resist. 3,000 human warships spread across the galaxy, like an unstoppable plague carrying weapons and technology that made the Empire's finest achievements look primitive by comparison. Each vessel represented decades of desperate innovation and genetic modification that had transformed humanity into something new and terrifying." Admiral Morrison stood alone on the bridge of his flagship, watching the stars that had once belonged to the Empire that tried to destroy his people. Humanity had finally come home, not as broken survivors, but as apex predators who had learned to use their enemies' own weapons against them. The galaxy would never be the same again, and the age of human dominance was about to begin.